Welcome back to the Manual Docker and .NET section of the Getting Started with Docker course. In this lesson, we're going to be concentrating on prepping our environment to work with Docker. So there's just a little bit of work to do. I want to show it to you. So I have here the preview version of Visual Studio 2019. By the time you're watching this feature will probably be in the full version of Visual Studio 2019, but with the preview bits, actually today came out this option. If you go to Tools menu, Command Line, Developer PowerShell, and that opens up a PowerShell window in the root of your application. So if you do a dir here, you see sample web app, the Docker ignore, and a sample web app.sln or sample app.sln. So that's a really neat feature. Notice it is for the 16.2.0-pre. So that's just something to note in case you don't see it. If you don't, just open up PowerShell, have that directory on your clipboard. So if you were to open up the directory here, so you go to Open Folder in File Explorer, and then just copy this directory. And then when you open up PowerShell, no matter where you are, just type cd space and that path. You just paste it in, Control V, hit Enter. You'll be in the right path now. Okay, so CLS to clear screen, and we're good to go to start working with Docker. Now, one of the things we're going to find out is that when you add Docker support for a Visual Studio project, it immediately pulls some images. So if we do Docker images, we actually have a couple of images. We have the mcr.microsoft.com/.net/core.asp.net, the stretch slim, and we have sample web app dev. Now these are both images that Visual Studio created for us in anticipation of us building our application. The idea is it makes things a little faster for us. However, let's not depend on another tool to do the job for us. Let's figure out how to do it on our own. So I'm going to do a Docker remove image, RMI, $Docker images -q in parens. That will remove all the images. And now if I do Docker images, it's empty. If I do Docker ps-a, there's no containers either. So we're all set. Let's go back to our Visual Studio and look at that Docker file for these two images. I'm going to copy the stretch slim first and go back to PowerShell. I'm going to say Docker pull and paste in that image. What this is going to do is it's going to pull down the image to my machine because currently it's not on my machine. Now I don't have to do this, but the first time you do a Docker build, it's going to look to see if you have this image on your machine. If you don't, it will do the Docker pull first behind the scenes, which may seem like, then why are we doing an extra step? Well, because this is something you can do anytime, especially when you're online now, but maybe you're not online later. Maybe you're on a plane or something like that. Well, you can do a Docker pull and prep your environment. So I hit Enter, and it's going to start downloading the different layers of the stretch slim image. So it's a total of, I believe, 260 megabytes. That's not small, but now if I do a Docker images, I see I have that one stretch slim, and yes, it's 260 megabytes. Now I can go back to Visual Studio and copy the other one, which is my build environment, the SDK. This is a little bigger. So Docker pull and paste that one in. Same thing. It's going to download the various layers and put them onto my machine in a cache. That way, next time when I go to do a Docker build, it won't have to do these downloads. And this like you're seeing here, is a little bit more significant than you'd want to wait for when you're in a hurry. If you want to just build something really quick, find out if it works, you don't want to wait for hundreds of megabytes worth of images to download. The other thing to note, if you're on a metered connection, like if you're on a hotspot, or if you have to watch your internet usage, you gotta be careful when you download these images. So this Docker pull command really can come in handy. If you can get onto a Wi-Fi network where it's not metered, then download them then before disconnecting from that network. Now Docker Images has two images. One is 1.74 gigabytes. That's the full SDK. And then one is the 260 megabytes. That's just the stretch slim. So a difference here is the SDK is the full .NET Core SDK that allows us to do anything with .NET as far as building or testing or publishing. Whereas this version right here, it's just a web server. That's really all it does. It has the .NET, the ASP.NET Core library stuff on it so that it can do just the .NET run essentially, and run a web project. And that's it. That's why it's 260 megabytes versus the 1.74 gigabytes. Big difference. So with that, our environment is now prepped, and we can move on to our initial build of our Docker file. So once you're done with this, once you've got your stuff downloaded, then come on back for the next video where we start building our Docker file.